Hey, what's up everybody, Shadmoki here, and today we're looking at the big boy notes, the 8.4 update notes, King of Uruk. I didn't actually watch the past notes, so I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, I'll cover Gilgamesh in his own video. I don't need to go over it here, because essentially it'd either be like a guide anyways, because I would go ability by ability in game, because I'm not just gonna read his abilities. That's stupid. I think you can't really make up your mind about a character just by reading the abilities. I think you need to get your hands on them and feel them for yourself, essentially. So yeah, Gilgamesh is coming. Some pretty good skins as well. New Slash mode is coming out Q4 2021. Hey, that should be cool. They're changing up Baba Yaga too, to make her a little more fun to use, especially in her ultimate, so I'm excited for that. I have a few bug fixes, and then there'll be a huge, well, not huge, but pretty big Conquest update going on here. So first off is going to be some visual updates. So first off, the Skybox is going to be completely different. There's going to be some new effects around the bases and things like that. But the big one is these vine walls, which are going to protect parts of the jungle and can be killed by via auto attacks, and they're going to respawn in tandem with buff respawn timers, essentially. So it's going to be blocking off parts of the jungle. You can see it's a little hard to see, but they're represented by these little gray guys here. Are going to be where the vine walls are. So it's just making it a little more difficult to try and invade people, apply pressure into their jungle, things like that. I think it's depending on, of course I need to get in game and actually feel how the vine walls feel, but I think this might be a little overkill. It might just slow the game down to a crawl and make it a little too boring, I think. But obviously they haven't gone super overboard with where they've placed them, right? There isn't a billion of these things. But I do think it's going to slow the game down pretty significantly. Especially on the Gold Fury side of the map. And the thing is, the game is already so volatile, a lot of people feel like they should just be playing safe so that they don't get steamrolled, because the meta is a little steamrolly. So they were doing that anyways, and this just kind of reinforces it. But it's also to prevent that steamroll by applying these walls. So, number of hits, not damage. Okay, did they say the number of hits? I didn't actually see. But yeah, basically they despawn at 15 minutes. So yeah, it's just to reinforce not getting steamrolled, essentially. And this is what the vinyls look like, and that's what the Skybox looks like. Can I? Oh, it is bigger, yeah. There you go. Okay. Great. Yeah, I gotta see. Smite patch notes are probably the best patch notes out there. I'm not even lying. Like, Paladins looks okay, League of Legends looks okay. I think Smite's patch notes are the best looking patch notes out there. And then just a few more changes here. Invisible foliage tech. So basically when you go into an aerial ultimate, the trees will be invisible temporarily. Just because, people like Rom, people like Thor, they're getting kind of screwed over by those trees in certain areas. Not all the time, but it was screwing people over occasionally. And that should never be a thing. Like, trees blocking the map, that shouldn't have been a thing. So, they've called it invisible foliage tech, and if it works as intended, I think that's great. I think the map does look good with those trees. So this is a really good in-between of having the nice visual of the trees, but then not screwing over people with aerial ultimates. And then a pretty interesting change here with tier 2 towers increasing the base HP and increasing the damage they deal. I guess, again, trying to reinforce the whole anti-steamroll thing. Like a current Guardian with like Sentinel's Embrace and Gauntlet of Thebes, even without Fire Giant on them, is barely going to take an eighth of their health to a tower, and I'm not even kidding. It really doesn't do that much damage to them, so they want to help with that in both ways, in terms of not being able to eviscerate towers quite as quickly. It's probably only going to give you an extra second, maybe, of tower time, of tower life, right? And then, like, the increased base damage per shot is probably, again, not really going to affect too much. But it's not like the towers are bad, right? It's just when people get going, the towers are too easy to beat down, right? That's the idea. It's not that they're super weak all the time. It's just in that specific situation where a team is really far ahead, it's too easy. So, I think I agree with that. So, Greatest Scorpion in the Jungle. So, these are the ones that are in Fire Giant and Gold Fury's place till you kill them. All around the board, just way less tanky. I do agree. I think they were a little too tanky for what they do. I mean, getting buffed buffs. Improved, upgraded, or whatever. Enhanced buffs. There we go. Getting enhanced buffs is pretty strong, but it just wasn't worth it, really, to go for this almost ever, unless you have a team that's really good at just destroying objectives, right? So, that's a thing. Hopefully this will help. It seems like pretty big nerfs just all around the board. Like, it's really big nerfs to absolutely every defensive part of the Scorpion. So if you have 2 or 3 people in the jungle, specifically around like 3 people, like a jungler and your duo lane, like, now I think they should be able to kill Scorpion like they were theoretically supposed to be able to when they really just weren't before. And now red buff holder as well. Does a little bit less damage. I do agree it was doing too much damage. Not to junglers like me, but for mid laners who they were at the red buff and their jungler was off doing something else. They want to get the red buff timer. Yeah, they got shit on by that red buff. I don't cap. Pretty much any mid laner just got slapped around by those red buffs. So pretty good idea just to take down the damage a peg. Base gates. Oh, I actually didn't even read this one yet. Added new rules linking Phoenix deaths to doors. Killing left Phoenix removes the debuff area on the left door. Oh, okay. So you could just come in and out, I guess. Removes the debuff for both doors. Wow. Okay, so they're encouraging going up mid with that. I think that's huge, actually. The right and left one, these I think make sense. This might be a little too much. Debuff areas for both doors. They faux shizzle? That's a bit much, I think. I think that might be overkill. I like these two. This one would be overkill. Man, how did I not catch that? Whatever. Boombus Hammer, no longer procs off immune. No longer procs off immune. No longer procs off immune. I mean, that should just... You're basically getting lifesteal off of... by doing nothing. So, like, you were able to just sit outside of buff camps as a ranged character and just heal up for free. So... Obviously, they don't want that to be a thing, so here we go with that. And now they're going to upgrade the Gilded Arrow, upgrade Ornate Arrow. Kind of a silly name, but anyways, this item now provides 10% attack speed. Cool, that's good for a hunter item. This item now provides 5 critical strike chance. Okay, yeah, it was crit based anyways, right? So this is the crit item. So they decrease the maximum stack count from 25 to 20. That's pretty huge. Increase the attack speed. Oh, wow. Wow, that's just massively buffed. So they increase the attack speed you get from it. As well as, yeah, the stacks you get from both. And then put it base, the ones you're losing, they put it base on the item. That's massive. That's just huge. That's catatonic, as a matter of fact. Yeah, wow, that's a really good item. Question is, like, is that worth... people are going Gilded in some matchups anyways, so I think this just makes Gilded an even better option. You might see it more often, especially on crit-based characters. Obviously, crit's fallen a little bit out of favor, but I think it is still good. I don't think crit's dead just yet. So I think this is going to be a really, really solid item when... you know, on characters where crit is still good, and then if and when crit comes back, it's going to be nasty. Now, upgraded Leather Cowl. This item now provides 15% attack speed, and they've changed the passive on this one. This one was the bad one, right? This is the one you just never want to buy. I don't think people are buying Cowl upgrade anyways, but let's read. You provide 5% increased power to all nearby enemy allied gods. This aura gains a bonus stack for each allied god within 55 units, causing it to provide 3% increased power. For each a stack is removed. Okay, so it's very similar to the old one, but now I think it's a little bit stronger because it capped out at 3 before, right? Yeah, it capped out at 3% increased, like stacked 3 times. But now it can stack all the way up for every person on your team, but now one gets removed for enemy gods near you. Okay. That's interesting. I don't know if that's worth it though. That's one of those ones where it's like the passive is so hard to like try and manage that it's like why am I even bothering with this? This isn't something that we can just passively play around like a Sentinel's Embrace or something. I think this is so awkward to try and play around, especially with the whole loses stack if an enemy gets near you. It's just like, wait, whoa. Enemy guardian, don't come close to me. I need my leader's cowl stack. Don't come near me, please. Thank you. So, like, it's out of your control if you get the maximum out of the item. I don't like that. But okay. They're changing around Sentinel's Embrace a little bit. Basically, they're going to increase passive aura range, increase the protections that you get base from the item from 20 to 30, and now they're going to decrease the amount of protection split by nearby allies from 100 to 80. That's nice. Then decrease the protection gains alone from 50 to 40, so that's to make up for the fact that it has just the regular base stats increase. So, yeah, I would say this is a good change. Make the Guardian themselves tankier more often, and then make the aura a little less impactful. If you're going to keep the stacking auras, you got to nerf the auras themselves. I think this is definitely still 100% the D support item, I think. So, I like what they're doing with it, but it's definitely still the best, in my opinion. They changed around Compassion a bit, because it's a weird item, right? That's the one that basically you take damage for your allies, which is a really interesting idea, actually. So they've increased the passive aura range. I think that was probably the biggest problem with it, was just that the aura range just wasn't big enough to really make sense to use it. Increase the protections a little bit, which is helpful. And then increase the HP 5, which is an interesting idea. All the way up to 45. I mean, that's a lot of HP 5. It's one of those... HP 5 is one of those stats that's, like, hard to conceptualize in your mind. Like, okay, it's active all the time, so how do I know when it's effective and when it's not? Isn't it just effective all the time? And it kind of is, right? Like, you just get a lot of health regen, which of course helps with the whole idea of you're tanking damage for other people. So, yeah, I mean, the item's definitely a lot better now. I know the Cheese, Lono's Mask, Compassion build, maybe that'll become more of a thing. Lono's Mask, Compassion, Fenrir, or something. Oh my god, wait, that sounds so annoying. I'm doing that. I'm actually doing that. But, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is definitely just the increased passive aura range. I think that was its biggest flaw. And then the HP 5 is nice. So now they're switching around Sundering Axe. This one was the percent health damage one, which was kind of goofy because Bruiser Assassins could go this and one-shot people. So what they're doing instead is decreased the bonus damage from 10% of the enemy's current health to 5% of the enemy's current health, but now it's plus 2% of your total protections from items, and this goes up to 14%. And they've kindly mentioned, again, SMITE patch notes, best patch notes, they've mentioned it requires 400 total protections to reach the cap. So they've kindly added this. Just to clarify, you need 400 total protections to hit that. We don't need to do the math here, because I'm bad at math anyways. But, so essentially this is going to be much less effective on, like, Bruiser Warriors and Bruiser, what's it called? Bruiser Assassins especially, because obviously they don't have the base stats really to reach those protection levels without significantly lowering their build's power output. So it's sort of this little trade-off. I think this might be too good on Warriors, though. That it always comes back to Warriors, doesn't it? I mean, Guardians can get it too, right? So yeah, I think on Warriors and Guardians this might be too good. Because, like, Bruisers are already great this season. So, the thing is, like, I think they're going to hit that 200 protections. Sorry, 200 protections each was what I had in my head. I think they're going to reach that 400 total protections easily. I think this only nerfs it for Bruiser Assassins, really. Yeah, you know what? I think that might be OP on Warriors and Guardians that go this. But, move on to Bluestone Pendant. Increased power from 10 to 15. Definitely makes sense. It's so expensive. It needs to be this big kapow, boom, wow early game item, and it had 10 power, which was like a meandering amount of power compared to other starter items. Of course, it has the damage over time passive, right? That was supposed to make up for it, but it just wasn't really. Like, the cost was just so much that, like, people would just out-sustain you with the extra pots they could get, and then just kill you anyways, because you couldn't out-sustain them. In general, that's what I found, at least. Bluestone Brooch, massive increase to the base damage of 50. 50 extra damage on that. Sheesh. I mean, yeah, it was terrible. I mean, there's no reason to buy this item. I mean, there was no reason to upgrade Bluestone anyways. So maybe now you might see this in solo lane, actually, because Brooch got upgraded as well as a Bluestone. But the thing is, as I mentioned, Sundering Axe also just got upgraded, and Warrior's Axe is already great. So, there might be something we might experiment with later. Next up is Alternate Timeline. This is, of course, the one that makes it say you don't die when you die. They decrease the cooldown from 10 minutes to 6 minutes. Definitely needed doing. 10 minutes was just way too long. There's just no reason to get this item unless it's, like, if they're barreling into your Titan room, right? There was no reason to buy this item otherwise. And the thing is, if they're barreling into your Titan room, you'd probably just go, some other upgrade or some other, hyper late game item anyways. So definitely decreasing it to 10 to 6 minutes makes it a lot more of a mainstay type of item because you're going to be able to use it more than once, basically. I think I only had one game ever where I saw it go off twice in one match. So yeah, definitely necessary. Obviously, they didn't want to cut it to 5 minutes. That would probably be a little too much. So 6 minutes I think is a good in-between. Staff and Mirrodin fixed an issue where this item was not triggering at the same time after ultimate ability fires as the other Arthurian items. Okay? I don't know. I don't like the idea of this item. It's already a decent item because the stats are so good. I don't like the idea of like double using abilities after you ult. Not only is it really clumsy on a lot of characters because you're not meant to be able to do that, so it feels clumsy. But it also could just be OP if they decide to overbuff this item. And it'd just be really unfun. And that's just my opinion. I mean, it is a cool idea, but like, say, Agni double dash, Isis double spirit ball. Oh, I just said Isis. Damn it. ESET. Whatever. You know what I mean. Yeah, I think it's a really volatile type of item. And I mean, I like it, but I also don't, because I don't want it to be good. But yeah, basically it was just a bug fix. But I mean, like, it is a buff, because I mean, if it wasn't triggering at the same time, then, you know, didn't feel as good. So they're going to buff Achilles, decrease the cooldown on his 1 from 15 to 14, 1 second. Not the biggest deal in the world. They obviously don't want to overbuff Achilles because, like, he's been good since he came out, essentially. And only really, like, from the beginning of this season is when he really start to feel off a little bit. So they don't want to overbuff him, of course. But this one I think is a big one. Bonus damage, decrease the bonus damage taken from 10% to 5% per stack on every execute you do. I think that's huge because once he got to 2 executes, he was like a paper bag, basically. Like 20% extra damage taken. That was not okay. So I think this is just massive. And as he gets, like, the thing is, this buff goes from being good to amazing to incredible as you get more executes off in a fight. So I think that's a great change for him. Definitely a good idea. But I mean, more of the issue is like he kind of just sits in lane and potatoes out, and then he can't be effective when he's effective. If that makes sense. So I don't know if this necessarily fixes that. This definitely helps him late game though. So that's good. So buffing Bacchus. Ugh. Alright, decrease in mana cost of Chug from 40 to 20 at all ranks. That's cool. Decrease the cooldown, also really good. He needs to be max passive all the time, usually. Fixed protections description. To clarify, the ability provides 0 protections at rank 0. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think this is smart. I mean, you gotta be at max passive, like, all the time, pretty much. So, decreasing the mana cost is a really good way of doing that, but I don't think you want it to be 0 mana cost. I think that'd probably be overkill. Then, of course, decreasing the cooldown so you can try and time yourself better to prep it without having to chug too many times before an actual fight starts. That's good. Then increased base damage. Oh, I don't like those words on a tank. But anyways, decrease the base damage on his belch. Yeah, by 5 per tick. That's not too bad. Obviously, you don't want to overbuff his damage, but of course, you still want him to be an effective damage source because he is a little... Other than the flop, he's a little lacking in terms of... Well, actually, the flop isn't exactly the best CC ever anyways because it's so slow. But, yeah, you definitely want to be able to be pumping out damage as well as being a good tank, a good CC bot as well. Jormungandr gets some changes too. That's cool. That's good. That's good. I think Jorm's a really cool character. He just he's really volatile in that he either does way too much damage and doesn't die, or does 0 damage and then dies. So, he's kind of in a tricky spot. But okay, consuming bellow, increased duration of empowered attack speed buff from 1 second to 1.5 per stack. That's yeah. He gives. Is that in an aura? Yeah, I think it is, right? Well, whatever. So obviously per stack, this can get pretty crazy, but you usually don't consume too many pools at once. It's usually just 1 or 2. So it's not exactly a huge buff, but again, another one that they don't want to overbuff. Like Achilles, you don't want to overbuff Jormungandr. And then his submerged, I think this is the best change by a mile between the two. Reduce the cooldown from 16 seconds, and now it scales down 1 second every rank. So down to 12 seconds. I think that's awesome. Him being pretty much completely immobile outside of his ultimate, because I mean you could just stun, silence, whatever him out of this. Obviously he can't be displaced, but like you can use any hard CC to get him out of this as soon as he goes into the submerge. So I think that's awesome to get the cooldown down a little bit. It's not like it's an OP ability or anything like that anyways. So I think it's a good place to try and buff him. Same with this, right? They didn't go straight for his damage or anything, just for his utility, and then this for his safety. You know, like buff the stuff that's not so hot about him. I think that's a good way to go, instead of saying, okay, now his 2 just does as much damage as it did when he was released, which I don't want to even think about. So let's move on. Alright, so next up is a Merlin buff. You know Merlin's my boy. That's probably my favorite mage. But so now what they're doing is increase the protections reduced per stack. Instead of scaling up as you rank it, it's just 4% of all ranks. I think that's great because like he pretty much never levels as 2 anymore. He pretty much only levels as 1. So making it just a static number is a really good way to make the Fire 2 more effective, and then decrease the max stacks from 6 to 4, obviously to try and balance that out a little bit more and make it more effective to get like 1 or 2 ticks off. Because like I don't know if you guys remember, they made it so the protection shred only works on gods now, so you can't shred objectives like you could. So in essence, the current balance that was in place was just a moot point essentially. Like they didn't have to be this low because it didn't have it on objectives anymore, right? So I think they just decided, okay, we should just move that around a little bit and make it so the protection shred's a lot stronger. If we're going to make it only on gods, make the protection shred a lot stronger. I think that makes sense. And they don't touch anything else about him. Just leave that so he doesn't become crazy OP anymore. So I think he is still good, though. They say he dropped off heavily. I don't know if he dropped off heavily. I think he's still pretty good. Obviously, not as good as he was. He's definitely not pick ban every game, but I think he is still really solid. It's obviously also just not as a meta. It's really bursty right now. That's not really Merlin's thing. So, not really cause for concern just yet. The fact that he's not great in this particular meta, you know what I mean? Like, he was never going to be good in a burst meta, other than when, you know, like, release Merlin, basically. Like, that would still be good, because that was crazy, right? But he was never going to be good in a burst meta post, like, Season 6 or 7 or so. So, like, I wasn't freaking out about Merlin's place in the balance. And now, Neith's Spear Arrow, which is her 1, decreases cooldown as you rank it. Awesome change. I think that's a completely fair change for her. Because she's obviously going to be leveling her 1. There's no reason to level any other ability. So if she's maxing her 1, if that's her main source of like trading, main source of clear as well, decrease the cooldown on it as you level it. I think that's a really smart way of doing it. Of trying to buff her, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, I mean, the problem of her still be having these really slow animations, like really slow pre-fire times, and all of her abilities on her backflip, on her 2, even on her 1 as well. I think that's the core issue with her. But, you know, you don't want to overbuff a character like this. She can one-shot waves, like a level 5. She can one-shot carries if they're standing on a weave or something. She can like half-hit mages in mid lane with her ult. So you got to be careful where you want to buff her, not make her too safe. But I do think this isn't exactly where she needs to be helped, even though I think it is a good change. But if they do buff her in the long run, then this buff might come back to bite them, balance-wise. And now Ulron, increasing his base power, which is his his attack damage, and then also increasing the critical strike damage from 50% to 55%. So essentially what they're doing here, it's a pretty interesting way to try and buff Ulron. Obviously, he's not exactly great right now, but what they're doing instead is making his hyper carry game stronger. So I think the idea, what they're trying to get at here, is that they still want Ulron to be a risk, right? But they want to make that risk feel really worth it. I mean, he already swings late game, but now they just want him to eviscerate people. So I mean, this is every auto. Keep that in mind. It's not just you get this small increase once. This is every auto. Every critical strike is doing 5% extra damage. Every auto is doing 2 extra damage. I know that doesn't sound like that much, but when they work in tandem with one another, it actually increases to a decent amount of damage over time. It could save you from doing 1 or 2 extra autos, and sometimes that could be all you need as a carry to get out alive in a fight. So, I don't know. He still feels way too risky. Like, why would you ever pick Ulron over any hunter, really? Whether or not crits in the meta doesn't really matter. Well, just why would you pick Ulron over any of the other hunters who are just infinitely safer than him and can outcarry him for the most part simply because they can live longer. Maybe they don't do as much damage as Ulron late game. Maybe they don't have Ulron ult, but they can live longer than him. So what's the point of playing Ulron, in my opinion? So I'm not sure if this is the best direction to go with Ulron. Hey, maybe he'll be OP next patch and I'll be proven wrong, but I don't know. I think they need to change something in terms of his overall safety before he's ever going to be relevant again. So next up is Cirquette. They're going to buff Cirquette, which is interesting. She's another one of those characters who's just been good forever, so they don't want to overbuff her. But I think this might be an overbuff here. So first off, the Catalyst passive. This is an interesting little change here. So her passive will only be consumed. That's the one where you stack it with your abilities, and then when you auto them, it explodes and does percent health damage to them. So stacks will only be consumed and extra damage dealt if Cirquette successfully damages the god, as opposed to simply hitting them. So this is obviously directed at immune targets, I guess. Like when they're ageist or something. I didn't even think about that. So I guess it's supposed to be like a failsafe. If someone aegis your auto as it's coming out and you have the passive on them, it won't proc because you don't damage them. So, okay, that's a nice little change for him. I don't think it quantifies itself as quality of life because it's just a straight up buff, right? Like, you just get damage where you otherwise wouldn't have, right? So... But the big one for me is increase the power scaling from 55% to 70%. So that's a 15% power increase. I think that's pretty huge. I think people are still going to be playing Cirquette as a bruiser or a tank, but I do want to go in and try a damage Cirquette build after this. I think this is going to do a billion damage. I think this might do a little bit too much damage. Honestly, even with just a bruiser build, I think this might be doing too much damage. Because keep in mind, it is still true damage, this ability. So, yeah, I think this buff might be a little overkill. I would have just buffed it up to 60% if you're gonna buff the ult. I don't know if I'd go all the way to 70. It's gonna be it's gonna be intense. It's gonna be a lot of damage coming your way that you can't heal through. So next up, with Sylvanas. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like Sylvanas. But anyways, they increase his basic attack damage. Obviously, that's going to help him push in lane. One of the great things about Sylvanas is that he's able to help push the wave without expending any mana at all, just using his AoE autos. That's why Mannequin Sylvanas was actually decent for a little while there. Obviously, it's not really a thing anymore. But this is going to help, definitely. This can, again, with like Ulron, this is going to save you from doing 1 or 2 extra autos on a wave. And that could be the difference between you being able to pressure or not being able to pressure, or being able to get away from a wave in time before a gank happens and still get the XP. Little things like that, it does add up. And then a pretty significant buff, which I don't really like because damage to Sylvanas is so annoying. Even Bruiser Sylvanas does like a trillion damage, and adding more damage, it's a 15% scaling increase to his 1. I mean, yeah, I know. Damage Sylvanas isn't really a thing in Conquest. But, oh my god, I could smell it now. I'm just gonna... I can smell the damage Sylvanas players coming from here. They're just gonna blink on me, ult, 1, and just one-shot me instantly. And you think I'm lying. You think I'm lying. Go up against a Sylvanas who goes Lifesteal Boots, Lotus Crown Rod, and just get back to me when you're done with that. It is not fun. It's definitely beatable. I'm just saying it's annoying. But yeah, overall, that's probably a good change. Give him a little bit more damage. Because he's obviously realistically not going to get against damage Sylvanas. I'm just saying. So, Team S sees a bunch of changes. So, decrease the damage mitigation. Thank you, God. To 30% at base, plus 5% of Team S magical power, capping at the total of 60 from before at 600 magical power. I think this is a fair change. If they're gonna keep on insisting on having this stupid damage mitigation instead of just like a shield or something, fine, yes. Yeah, new character can only be countered by true damage. Oh wait, not even true damage gets to that damage mitigation. Anyways, so they're obviously making it less effective early game, which, as you may remember from my few times running into Tiamats in my videos, that was definitely my issue with it. It's just way too effective early and mid game, and of course it's going to only be more effective later and later in the game as it goes. And obviously, again, this is a very bursty meta, so late game the damage mitigations were helping, but it's going to get shredded through a lot quicker. So I think this is a decent balance if they want to keep this damage mitigation here. I wish they wouldn't, but anyways, they're going to be nerfing the Summon Serpents, the stupid tower push things. Why do these things push the wave? When Tiamat was new, I thought these things just went for gods and towers and stuff and just ignored minions. Why do they push? It's so annoying. But anyways, decrease number of hits it takes for minions to damage a serpent. Health pip? Huh? Health pip? What? From 3 to 2? So I guess that makes it easier to kill for the aforementioned minion waves. Okay. And decrease power scaling from 8% to 5% of team has magical power. Obviously, it's taking the damage down a peg. Still hate it. Like, this is stupid. Why is she able to just spawn minions at a Phoenix and then run it down lane while she goes to another lane? Dude, I'll watch a stream. Watch any SMITE streamer stream real quick and just see the team that's doing that and getting free XP and getting fed. Well, I don't know, guys. It seems a little OP. But Summon Storm, the other ultimate ability, adjusted the description. Okay. And increased initial hit damage scaling from 30% to 40%. Increased tick damage scaling 10 to 12. Yeah, it wasn't a very high damage ability. This, it looks really cool, so there's that. But yeah, it really wasn't doing very much damage, and the knockup isn't very consistent because you can actually move yourself around and make the knockup less in Tiamat's team's favor, essentially. So you can, I think you just want to like backpedal at an angle, and you just flick yourself backwards, essentially, with the tornado. So they just wanted to do more damage because it wasn't doing very much damage anyways, so that's fair. And then the final... Oh my god, it's been 30 minutes. The final change. Increased magical power scaling per tick from 15% to 20%, 75% to 100% total. That's cool. That's a cool change for Zankui. Just increases overall damage. Especially this being his way of poking people, essentially. He's just lay the guard on them. And, I mean, 25% extra scaling, that's pretty huge. I think it's going to be one of those ones where it's like, okay, I'll age, I'll try and see if I'll take enough damage to where I don't have to age just the final tick of the card. And then they think it won't do as much damage as they think it will. Boom, they die. I think you're definitely going to see that a few days after the patch comes out. So yeah, I mean, hey, more damage on Zhong, the merrier, I think. And he's pretty much been forced into doing bruiser builds. You can't really go full damage Zhong, as fun as it is. Realistically, you're just going to kind of die. So him being forced into more of a bruiser route, this makes sense. Just adding a little bit more scaling damage to him instead of base damage, so it doesn't feel like it's unfair. Because, of course, he takes a risk in getting more power into his build to make use of this buff, right? So I think that's a fair trade-off. That's that is patch 8.4. I'm gonna go grab some water. That was a very long patch. I think it's overall very loaded. I don't know what to think about it just because there's so many changes. Some changes I think are good. Some changes I think are meh. Some changes I think are kind of unnecessary. No changes that I think are straight up bad, but some that just feel like they're not doing enough, or are doing a little bit too much. And yeah. Nothing too groundbreaking here. I'd like to see how the vines work, and of course we'll go into more detail on Gilgamesh in a later video. So, thanks for watching.